Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I must come with apologies from the Transport Department of the Roman Army, as weather conditions in the Eastern Mediterranean have made it impossible for us to bring the witnesses for your graces to cross-examine. These are the women who were present during the events which we started to investigate last week surrounding the death of Mr. Jesus Josephson and his alleged recovery. The women involved are Mary, who is believed to be the mother of Mr. Josephson, Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, Salome, and Joanna. There is another woman involved, a Mary of Magdalena, but we will be cross-examining her on a separate occasion. These women were with Mr. Josephson throughout a significant portion of his ministry, and they were responsible for providing for Mr. Josephson on a number of occasions where they were supporting him in his ministry and also supporting a large group of men. I believe there were 12 disciples of this Mr. Josephson, who were also called apostles. And these gentlemen had given up their work and were being provided for by these women. These women have therefore invested a great deal of time and money in the ministry of Mr. Josephson. Mary, the mother of Mr. Josephson, is a widow. Her husband, Joseph Davidson, was a carpenter in Nazareth and a descendant by various bizarre means of King David, the reputed second king of Israel and Judah. Mr. Joseph Davidson is died, and there is some question as to whether he was actually the father of Mr. Joseph's son, as there appear to be reports that Mr. Josephson may have been born illegitimately. I refer your graces to papers 3 and 4, which recount some curious events around a town called Bethlehem. These women were with Mr. Josephson just before his arrest, and then they appeared to have continued to follow Mr. Josephson as he was taken through the streets of Jerusalem to his place of execution. They stayed with Mr. Josephson despite the risks to themselves when the other men, most of the other men, apparently flee from the approaching arresting officers. You will see from the written evidence that these women went early in the morning on the Sunday. Apparently Jews cannot do any work at all on the Saturday. It's in their law that they have to have a day off a week. Quite a preposterous law, I'm sure you will agree. How anyone can manage with having slaves have a day off is absolutely ridiculous. But they have a day off where they don't do any work because their God told them they shouldn't. And so they did not visit the tomb of Mr. Josephson until Sunday, which is the third day since Mr. Josephson's death and burial. There are reports that Mary, the mother of Mr. Josephson, was present at the burial of Mr. Josephson himself. There is no documentary evidence, but there are apparently eyewitnesses that saw her cradling the body of her son and weeping as she held him in her arms. I think it is probable that this corroborates the evidence from the centurion who conducted the execution that Mr. Josephson was indeed dead when he was removed from the cross, because I'm sure that Mrs. Mary of Nazareth would not have permitted the burial of her son if she detected any signs of life. So these women on the Sunday morning go to the tomb to anoint the body. It is a Jewish custom to anoint a body with spices. And then Mr. Josephson apparently wasn't there. The stone had been rolled away and there was no sign of him. Instead, there was a man dressed in white who had said to them, "Do not be alarmed. He is not here. He has risen." Now, this is the account that's being passed around, I'm told, in Jerusalem at present by Mr. Josephson's disciples. And it's one of the reasons why your graces have initiated the investigation into the events surrounding the execution of Mr. Josephson and his alleged recovery. These women say that they saw this man and they saw an absence of Mr. Josephson, but then, instead of going as they were instructed by this man in white, they tell nobody because they are afraid. Your Graces, I appreciate how preposterous the idea is that someone could get better miraculously after being executed by the Roman army. We are, of course, efficient at crucifying people. We've been practicing it for many, many years. But there is a ring of veracity about their report. I've been listening to witnesses for many, many, many years. And an account like this would normally contain very positive elements describing the people involved. And these women make it very clear that actually, having heard this wonderful news of the resurrection of Mr. Josephson, that they don't actually go and tell anybody about it. I have to say, if they were manufacturing this report, it seems very strange that they would manufacture that particular fact. I leave it to your Graces to ponder this evidence. I am hoping that by this time next week we will be able to present a Ms. Mary of Magdalena to your Graces, because I think her testimony in particular deserves more attention. But I leave you with the written accounts of these women and ask you to consider whether, if they were fabricating this evidence, they would include such negative testimony of their own response to Mr. Josephson's apparent resuscitation. So, your Graces, I leave this with you to consider. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, this court shall rise.